people who have paid for the thing. How did it go? Story 1. I've done this 3 times. I'll summarize each. First was one of those well-known brothels outside of Vegas. Physically, she was the most attractive, but was also the least satisfying experience. And it was the most expensive by far. Saw her watching the clock a few times. I never really relaxed, trying to find a point between getting my money's worth and the clock running out before I could finish. Probably unfair of me to judge the whole place by one experience, but I probably would not go back. Second was a much less legal experience in South Florida. I was traveling a lot, was burned out on work, and wanted some stress relief decoupled from the stress of trying to find a hookup. It was a bit of an open secret among the guys at my workplace. We were all on the road constantly, and a few of us had started getting professional service in our hotels. Found a girl through one of those websites. Contacted her, verified rates and expectations, set a time. She arrived, and was straightforward and professional. Never saw her clock watch, or give any indication that she was not enjoying herself as well. Truth or professional courtesy? That's for her to know. I didn't last the entire time. I had scored some win on that trip as well, and we smoked out and chatted about life, work, and everything for a bit. Good experience overall. I tried to book her again, but we could not get our schedules to align before I moved on to the next project. Third was in Portugal, where independent service providers are legal. I was working for a cruise line at the time. A severe storm at our home port forced us to stay overnight in Lisbon. I had a few kinks that I wanted to try, but had not had a relationship that was open/honest enough for me to express them. So I looked up a professional in those areas. Best experience, and it was not close. This woman was the oldest and least physically attractive, but also the kindest, most experienced, and most interesting. This was all done at her place, so she had a great environment set up. We met, discussed expectations, established boundaries, said safe words, and got into it. Turns out the kinks were interesting in my head, but didn't do anything for me physically. This worked out, however. Not being into it made me last significantly longer than usual. After giving myself plenty of time to be sure I wouldn't suddenly start enjoying it, I invoked the safe word and we finished with more traditional sex. She let me use her facilities to clean up. Afterward, I was expecting to say my goodbyes and leave before she would kindly show me the door. But to my surprise, she encouraged me to stay. Music was played, wine was consumed. We were both pretty interested in each other's careers, so we spent a couple hours talking. I mentioned wanting to leave to find something to eat. She insisted I stay, and made me a light dinner. My scheduled 2-hour session turned into 5+ and a homemade meal. Like I said, the best experience by far. Story 2. It was fun, exiting and frankly a wholesome experience. Me and one of my oldest mates went to a brothel in a medium-sized coastal town by the Mediterranean after dinner and drinks. Way it worked there, and as I understand, similar to how things work at most places where sex workers are independent actors who aren't coerced, the potential customers seated themselves at the bar, and if anyone wanted their business they'd come say hi and negotiate a price. My friend and I sat drinking beer shooting the shit, and after a while some girls working the place came up. I immediately hit it off with the girl who came for me, so after some bantering haggle we headed to one of the rooms. My friend didn't immediately have the same rapport with the girl who came up to him, so they took a little more time. When we came to the room, the girl immediately took full control and I had a genuinely fun and positive experience. After we sat at the bar and talked until my friend came. Then we talked a bit more, the three of us, and my pal and me headed to the beach where we took a nightcap. Never paid for sex since, but that's honestly not on account of the experience being anything less than positive. Story 3. I'm a full-service sex worker/escort/hook, whatever term you prefer. I f for money, in Scotland. Legal here, within certain criteria, and yeah, a lot of guys are just lonely. More than a few times I've sat and just talked and hugged, and I'm a softie so usually only charge them travel money in the end, 'cause they're not horny, just lonely. I see sex work as more a form of therapy than something seedy or exploitative. I know some girls are exploited, traffickers deserve to rot in a hole, but but I often feel like I'm the one exploiting the guys. I see a couple of guys with disabilities. Lovely men, great kissers, good fucks, but can't get a stable relationship with a regular girl cause all people see is a wheelchair, etc. Quite sad, really. But hey, I bring them joy, I get fucked senseless, and I get spending money. Win-win. Story 4. It usually goes great. Was disappointed only once or so. She comes in, you chat for a minute and get right to it. You're dealing with a pro, so head will be great to fuck amazing with the really good ones. Sex depends on how long you can last, but will be amazing too usually. I personally prefer a BJ with Sam, so I make sure it's on her list of services, otherwise I choose someone else. She'll do almost anything you ask for, as long as she's okay with it, you're paying for it and you're being polite. Always shower and brush your teeth before she arrives. I've been damp too. Those ladies are geniuses at hand jobs. Pro tip: Europe is superior to the USA in every way in this field. I've never tried it in Thailand or other places in the Far East, so can't tell you about that. Bottom line, have your cash ready, be clean and hygienic, polite and nice, and you'll have a great time. Story 5. I'm going to throw my experience on here. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone else's, but I think there's a self-selecting romanticism of this topic that goes on in social media. I was involved in what is called the hobby from about 2012 to 2019. In that time I saw several dozen providers at massage parlors, and calls with advertising escorts, and even a few outcalls with higher-end providers. I never saw SWS, though I did have encounters at a few strip clubs. First, it's not glamorous. Like, at all. For the most part, it's very much a business transaction. Even the ladies who provide a real fee want to see the money first before putting on their game face. I got out of it for 2 reasons. For me, it was definitely part of an addiction, which I was later diagnosed with officially. It provided false intimacy and a dopamine rush that my dopamine-deprived brain desperately wanted. Real sex, even though I could certainly get it, was work. This required no work, and I could pretend that the person just genuinely wanted to make me happy. Maybe some of them did, but they really wanted my $300 per hour donation. I did eventually become friends with a provider. I didn't consider her a romantic partner, but I was genuinely concerned for her well-being. The life she lived was incredibly dangerous. She wasn't working against her will, but if she had had the ability to maintain her lifestyle any other way, she would have. I got a good look at the reality of it through her. I was incredibly surprised which of the escorts were represented, pimped. Some of them I would never have suspected. I wanted to think that I had never taken advantage of someone working against their will, but the truth is, I don't know. I probably did, and it makes me sick thinking about it even now. If you decide to get involved in this, just know that you can't guarantee you're not seeing an exploited person either. Some of the people I know were being pimped swore on online forums that they were independent. Of course they did. The woman I befriended told me eventually that she was pregnant with my child. In the end it wasn't true, but I think she was hoping I would go with it so that she would have a halfway responsible baby daddy instead of some random John. I'll never know because about a year later they found her body in a field. There was no evidence of foul play, but I know she wasn't using, and I still believe someone drugged her and dumped her. Her baby stayed with me for a while until a relative was able to take her. Needless to say, I'm not big on the whole industry. I don't have any animosity or put blame on the women, but I will never again be part of an industry with such a high potential for, and evidence of, abuse. I wish it didn't exist. Story 6. In my early 20s, I really cold-called local escorts because, frankly, I truly thought escorts were all just Hollywood myth. I didn't believe they were actually real people doing such things. Once I found out they were real, I tried to engage, to see for myself. 2 particular stories stand out, one nicknamed London. She looked familiar when I finally saw her face to face. Look up Ireland from MTV's The Real World. She looked like that, and this funnily occurred while the show with Ireland was airing at the same time. So it was that long ago. We met actually at her app, which was local to me. I chose local escorts online or listed on Backpage by their area code number. If it wasn't a local area code, I wouldn't engage. She was very nice, down to earth. Best part was after the sex, she took an old-school bath, with the door open. I had on my clothes, about to leave and couldn't resist. I asked if I could join her. She said sure. So I got naked again and joined her. For free. Just two strangers taking an old-school bath together. Then she got dressed and wore the tiniest miniskirt I'd seen. She hopped in my mom's Volvo with me and we went to Popeyes, next. Then we went to her brother's hair salon nearby so she could say hello, and after I dropped her off at her mom's place, she introduced me to her brother and mom, lol. Always thought I'd see her again. Never got round to it. I remember texting her once out of the blue moons later and she was happy to hear from me. But that's it. So far haven't run into her again in all these years. You'll love story number 2. Was feeling horny. Only local chick to respond to my call was a chubby, homely-looking Latina. I went for it. I get to the hotel we agreed on. She's running late. An hour to almost 2 hours late. On the phone anytime she called with updates on her whereabouts she seemed very preoccupied with other thoughts. She finally gets to the hotel. In a car I've never seen in my life. It was like a cartoon car. It was a mishmash of metal and odd parts. She asks me how to turn the car off. Because she had the keys in her hand. Yet the car was still running. Never experienced that in my life. I just kept playing with the car with her watching me at the parking lot of the hotel for the next 10 minutes. Finally get the car to turn off, don't know how. Soon as we get into the room, OL girl gets immediately naked and lays on the bed looking at the ceiling like a robot. Oh, forgot to mention, this chick looked just like Mariah Carey in the Vision of Love video. I was shell-shocked. Not really a Mariah fan, myself, but I couldn't believe/understand. I was like, you look nothing like your picture. She looked at me confused and said everybody tells her that. Obviously it was a wrong picture posted by her somehow. Anyway, this chick was totally preoccupied in her mind with some other issue. I couldn't believe she got naked so fast, like the hotel door was still open, lol. I remember I was so shocked I just stammered, aren't you gonna wash your hands first? Look, y'all, I thought this was a prank, first the funny car, then the Mariah look-alike. She sat up, looked at me silently, nodded, went straight to the bathroom and also took an open-door bath. Yes, I realized some similarity between my two stories. Coincidence, y'all. She was so lost in thought, she was mumbling to herself while bathing. I did not join her. Bathing in a public hotel, gross. She was sitting in the hotel/motel tub. Gross. She was so lost in herself, she left her open purse with me in the main room. I could have stolen my money back and then some. Nope, instead I brought her purse to her in the bathroom and advised her to stay with her belongings like we weren't the same age. She finishes her bath, it was like a full hard 10 minutes, and Lord, I've never smelled a girl so clean. Yes, it was only soap, but I mean she really smelled like soap all over. In a good way. Like she just came out of a package. Again, young Mariah, with long light brown hair. She was still naked this whole time. Slim, perky tits, flat tummy. Gorgeous. I hadn't even washed my hands myself. Of course, soon as she laid on the bed next to me, I was absolutely rock hard. Couldn't believe I was gonna get down with someone so hot. I got naked, she started to give me a handjob, then suddenly got up, said she was sorry but she had prior issues so she was leaving right now. And just left. Didn't finish the handjob. She just dipped out. Like 20 minutes later, I get an apologetic text from her saying she had a serious issue to attend to, we could reschedule but not today. I was cool, remember she was nearly 2 hours late, I was happy enough she finally did make it to the motel at least. Never did reschedule. Never saw her again nor heard from her. Story 7. Good timing, I was just in Rio de Janeiro 2 weeks ago and lost my virginity to a high-end escort, and it might have been one of the mentally healthiest things I've ever done for myself. I truly went all out in the experience I designed for myself. First, I booked an hour with a girl, and we just chatted the whole time. I wanted to make sure we could at least hit it off, and she was as lovely in person as she was in her profile, so then I moved on to the next phase of my first-time experience plan and scheduled a date with her for the following night at a Michelin star restaurant. I bought her a dress so that we'd both be dressed upscale and we went on a date. Afterwards, We went back to my Airbnb apartment with an incredible view of the ocean and continued chatting for a while, then eventually got into it and it was great. For this, I paid for an overnight session so there would be no worries about time. After the deed was done due to her tapping out, something that obviously boosted my self-confidence quite a bit, we cuddled in bed for a while and went to sleep, and she left the following morning. The whole experience, including her dress, her time, and the high-end dinner, cost me $1,000, which, all things considered, I felt was very reasonable thanks to the OP $1 to $5 to real currency exchange rate, and I would do it all over again without a second thought. The experience allowed me the opportunity to get to know someone on a deeper than surface level, to know the extent of my performance in bed, and to demystify sex as someone who's never been in a relationship at 27. It was an incredible experience, and I would honestly recommend it to anyone who has yet to be with a woman. Story 8. I looked for one a little more than 1 year after a LTR ended, and I just couldn't feel attraction for the opposite sex and wanted to skip through everything and see if seeing an S could boost me past all that apathy and disinterest. Long story short, it didn't work. It took me 20+ minutes just to get it up, could barely move the whole time, and had a dissociated episode where I basically felt nothing looking down on my orgasming body, which I could barely recognize as mine. She was incredible though. Interested, caring, and just wanted to make sure I was alright and well during each and every step. I was honest with her about what I wanted and felt like needed, and she came through it all with grace and confidence and calm. She also doubled my time for free and even refused strongly any kind of tip or an additional payment. She told me about her life and some struggles she thought I could learn a lesson from, and I'm thankful for that. We must have talked for an hour at least. So I guess I'm glad it happened. I'll cherish the memory and what I learned from it, but I will never seek an S again in my life. I need the emotional connection and to not feel like I'm in a movie pretending to like being with someone who is also pretending.